Joining us now, Mark Hanna, CEO of the Institute for Global Affairs, a nonprofit housed at the Eurasia Group, editor-in-chief of Foreign Policy, Ravi Agrawal, and former New York congressman and senior advisor of Vote Vets, Max Rose. Ravi, starting with you, let's start with Russia here. There's a lot to go through. With Zelensky possibly missing from this meeting with Putin, what progress can be made towards a peace deal if Zelensky's not even in the mix?
Yeah, Ukraine always laments when there are talks about Ukraine without Ukraine. So they'll be looking at this from the outside in, wondering what kinds of deals are being struck. But it's worth remembering here that while Trump's tone has shifted on Russia, his actions haven't quite shifted that much. Yes, there's some secondary sanctions on oil. Jury's out as to what that actually does. And there's already been an immense political cost in terms of the US-India relationship being harmed. But just in terms of, what Putin gets out of this, what Trump gets out of this, so much depends on the longer term. What kinds of security guarantees are in place? What kinds of support systems and structures are put in place? And all of that is the work of tough diplomacy. It takes weeks and months to work out, and a longer term commitment, none of which we've seen so far from Trump. Trump is coming across as someone who's in a rush to strike something, anything at all, a big photo op. And the fear really is that Putin, if anyone can take advantage of that.
Okay, so Putin has made clear that he won't budge on his territorial gains, and Zelensky seems to be, his hands are tied. The Ukrainian constitution won't allow for him to concede those places. So is a deal even tangibly possible?
Look, some sorts of advances could be made. I'm not ever going to say that two leaders shouldn't meet. Talks are important. The question is, is it worth it? In that, is anything Putin says worth it? And is there the threat of any penalty hanging over Putin that Trump actually could impose? For me, that is the main thing here, because, unless you have that guarantee that America would, for example, keep arming Ukraine, Putin is not going to feel like Trump has any real leverage over them. And so right now, this just looks like show and showbiz, but not any real diplomacy.
So, Mark, what do you make of Trump's changing tone on this conflict? First, very tough on Ukraine, now seems to have added a bit more weight to his frustration with Russia. What do you make of how this may impact those one-on-one meetings, and could we see any progress come out of them?
Well, I think to Donald Trump's credit, he is a president that has been willing to, at least rhetorically, use American leverage when it comes to ending both these wars. And you saw him in the lead-in segment, touting how he's going to be a peacemaker. That's at least his intentions are in the right spot, right? I agree with everything Ravi said about, there looks to be like he's in a rush here, and really, crafty, skillful, deft peacemaking and diplomacy is an arduous task. It takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of patience. But I do think we've started to see Donald Trump call out Benjamin Netanyahu and Vladimir Putin here in ways that are productive, right? Because in order to make peace or in order to end the conflict, it's oftentimes beneficial to go after the people who are perpetuating the conflict, right? Zelensky's not doing it. The Palestinians in Gaza are not doing it. It's Netanyahu's war and it's Putin's war. And so if Trump is going to have any success, he's going to need to show real credibility. I mean, we saw the Friday deadline come and go today on the ceasefire with Putin and these secondary sanctions which have been threatened. It's unclear how firm the president will be in exacting those, and he loses credibility when he doesn't follow through on those commitments. So I do think there is a way that the showmanship of these negotiations has to end, and the real arduous work of using American leverage to bring them to a close really has to begin if Donald Trump wants the credit, which I think he does, for successfully ending these wars.
And there's credibility in the geopolitical sphere, and then there's credibility at home, Max. We've seen polling that shows that the president's policies around the globe have not been so popular here at home. 41% approve, while 54% disapprove of his handling of all of these different conflicts. So what should we take away from that data, and what would it take for Americans to come around to his approach?
I think people on both sides of the aisle don't want war, and they want to see a projection of American strength and values. So it's okay for us to say that, there's universal or near universal support for some of these end goals, i.e. an end to bloodshed in Eastern Europe. But what I think the American people are seeing extraordinarily clearly right now is that Trump is all talk, all bluster. And beyond that, what's particularly alarming is that he also appears to be very erratic, saying, I'm going to do a meeting with Putin next week, but the deadline was this week. It seems to be everywhere, littered with some tariffs as well, and that would never have a majority of American support.
Do you think, though, that there should be credit where credit is due for some of the smaller deals that I guess you could consider them smaller, not to the people who are living through them, but Armenia and Azerbaijan, India and Pakistan? Will that resonate with Americans? I know that we're still looking at those two conflicts in Ukraine and in Gaza. Sure. At the forefront here.
Yeah, look, I think we all know which conflicts are at the forefront here, and that is principally, ensuring long-term peace and security for Israel, the return of the hostages, the end of any type of humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza, as well as the end to the conflict in Ukraine. But what's particularly important there is the American people, and this is certified by the data, they don't just want to see an end to the conflict in Ukraine. They want to see the long-term peace and security of the Ukrainian nation upheld, which means that the American people do not support Trump going to Putin, taking a knee, and giving him whatever he wants. That will not result in higher approval ratings.
And the Europeans wouldn't like that very much either. Mark, the Israeli cabinet has voted to retake Gaza City. Netanyahu's office says that it will do that while distributing humanitarian assistance to the civilian population outside of those combat zones. How realistic is that to deliver aid, given that the fighting could increase? And what could the plan actually look like?
Yeah, I mean, if we think what's going on right now in Gaza is a catastrophe, let's wait and see if this plan is enacted. I mean, and it's also a political challenge for Donald Trump here, too, because now, according to a survey last week, fewer than a third of Americans support the execution of this war by Netanyahu. Trump very carefully looks at these polls. And he has made some expressions of sympathy toward the Palestinians and the suffering and the horror that we're seeing, the catastrophic sort of humanitarian horror coming out of there. Look, I think Netanyahu has said that this is in, Israel's security interest, that it needs to occupy the entirety of Gaza in order to protect Israel's security. But as Max knows very well, having served in the post-9/11 wars in the Middle East, America's post-9/11 wars, you can't defeat a political ideology. You can't defeat extremism militarily, right? And so I think, just as the United States in different wars in the past has sometimes created as many terrorists as it might have killed, Israel runs that risk now. And the fact that this is such recent history suggests to me that Netanyahu hasn't necessarily learned this lesson. The goodwill that Israel has had here after October 7th continues to be squandered by Netanyahu, and the United States is taking notice. Some of its most important European allies, France, the UK, also its ally to the north, Canada, have all pledged to recognize a Palestinian state. This is driving a wedge between the United States and its European allies, and it's something that Secretary Rubio, that President Trump are clearly taking notice of.
And meanwhile, Robbie, you have the Arab League for the first time ever saying that Hamas has to go. But it's unclear. And in the Israeli plan, it seems that Israel would like to see some kind of neutral Arab governing body in Gaza. How likely is that to happen, given that the Arab states have said, don't take over Gaza City?
Yeah, look, that's the other side of this problem. And you and I have talked about this before. I'm glad that the Arab League is condemning Hamas. They should be condemned. We must all get together to discuss some sort of a plan for the day after. The day after should have happened many, many months ago, if not 2.5 years ago. By the way, as a slight aside, I do want to correct one thing just that we've been discussing so far. Trump claims that he resolved the India-Pakistan conflict. India denies it. I just want to be clear on that. And that has actually led to a lot of friction between the two sides. But just coming back to the Middle East, it's not just European countries saying that they're going to recognize the state of Palestine. Germany, for example, now has said right after this news of the Israeli cabinet wanting to take over Gaza City, that they're going to stop exporting weapons to Israel. So this growing mood against Israel, this pressure campaign, as it were, is really shifting the tide and bringing us closer, to answer your question, to some sort of discussion about a day after. However we get there, we are moving inexorably towards that point.
Yeah, a good point there that Trump seems to have resolved an acute escalation between those two countries, but it is unclear what the future holds there. And Max, just a final take on the status of the U.S.-Israel relationship, and especially the rift that we're seeing in Democratic quarters, and we're now seeing it in parts of the right as well. How can that be rectified?
So one is I do think that an honest conversation needs to be held with Israel about holding itself to a similar standard to what the United States held itself to during the post 9/11 global war on terrorism. But it's also important that we bring the conversation back to October 8th and October 9th. Because I think it is really critical to note that there is a segment of the population in America, principally in the advocacy community, that does believe that the October 7th attacks themselves were justified almost as in a continued act of freedom fighting. So their opposition to Israel has absolutely nothing to do with some of the significant mistakes that Israel has made over the last several years. Being able to separate that conversation and continue to reaffirm Israel's right to exist as a Jewish democracy, one that's held to the highest of standards, that's also going to be really important. And that was a place of unification on both sides of the aisle. And the hope is that we can return to that conversation.